My twins accidentally called their biological billionaire father when I collapsed. Problem is, he never knew he had twin daughters, but recognized their voices. Are you our daddy? The words hung in the sterile hospital air like a question that could shatter worlds. Griffin Drake stood frozen, staring at two 8-year-old girls with dark hair and green eyes the exact color of his own. Eyes like moss after rain. Eyes he saw every morning in the mirror. You sound like the voice, one of them whispered. The one from Mommy's voicemails. The one she plays when she's sad. Griffin's hands started shaking. These children, these beautiful, terrified children who had called him at 2:47 in the morning because their mother collapsed, were looking at him like he held all the answers. And maybe he did. Maybe the answer was written in their faces, in the slope of their jaws, in the way they tilted their heads when they were thinking. Just like he did. We think, the other girl said, her voice trembling with hope and fear, that you're our father. And Griffin Drake, billionaire CEO, tech genius, a man who commanded boardrooms and built empires, felt his entire world shift on its axis. Because the math was simple, the truth was unavoidable, and the woman who'd left him 10 years ago without explanation had apparently been carrying his children when she disappeared. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because to understand how a single phone call could resurrect a love story buried for a decade, you need to know how it all began. You need to know about the night Sloane Calloway's world went dark and too brave. Little girls made an impossible choice that would change 4 lives forever. If you've ever had to face a truth you weren't ready for, hit that like button right now. And stay with me, because what happens next will break your heart and put it back together in ways you never expected. The blueprints scattered across the floor like fallen snow, each precise line blurring into meaningless shapes. Sloane Calloway tried to grip the edge of her desk, tried to call out to her daughters, tried to do anything except fall. But her body wasn't listening anymore. The world tilted sideways, and darkness rushed in like a tide she couldn't fight. The sound of her knees hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the small home office. Architectural plans for the Morrison Center slid under furniture, their careful measurements and innovative designs suddenly irrelevant. Because Sloane, at 34 years old, successful architect and single mother of twins, was collapsing in her home office at 9:43 on a Tuesday night. Mommy? The voice seemed to come from very far away, even though Sloane knew her daughter was right there. The overhead light created a halo effect, brightness and shadow dancing together. She wanted to respond, wanted to say she was fine, just dizzy, just needed a moment. But her tongue felt thick, and her limbs wouldn't cooperate, and the darkness was winning. Mommy's on the floor. Another voice, higher pitched with panic. She won't wake up. Sloane tried to focus on the voices. Hazel and Iris, her 8-year-old twins. Her everything. She needed to get up, needed to reassure them, needed to be the strong mother who always had answers. But consciousness was slipping away like water through her fingers. We need to call someone. Where's the phone? I found Mommy's cell. Who do we call? 911. Sloane's last coherent thought before the darkness took her completely was a desperate hope that her daughters would be okay, that someone would help them, that this wasn't the end of the story she'd been writing for the past 8 years as a single mother. Wait, there's a number here. It says ICE. What does that mean? In case of emergency. I learned about it at school. Call it, Iris. Call it now. And then there was nothing but black. Hazel's hands shook as she pressed the phone icon next to the contact labeled Griffin-1CE. She didn't know who Griffin was. Her mother had never mentioned anyone by that name. But the phone was ringing, and her heart was pounding, and her mother was lying on the floor, not moving, and Hazel was 8 years old, and more terrified than she'd ever been in her life. Beside her, Iris knelt next to their mother, her hand on Sloane's chest. She's breathing, Iris said, her voice steadier than she felt. Her chest is moving up and down. That's good, right? I think so. Hazel pressed the phone to her ear, counting the rings. 1, 2, 3. Answer. Please answer. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked Puget Sound, Griffin Drake stared at the ceiling of his bedroom and wondered why sleep was so elusive lately. It had been this way for weeks now. Restless nights filled with thoughts of what-ifs and might-have-beens, dreams of dark hair and intelligent eyes, and a love he'd lost 10 years ago. At 41, Griffin had built an empire. Drake Technologies was worth billions, his artificial intelligence innovations had changed entire industries, and his name commanded respect in boardrooms across the world. He had everything most people dreamed of having, except the one thing that had ever really mattered. His phone rang at 2:47 in the morning, the sound cutting through the silence like an alarm. Griffin grabbed it reflexively, his mind still foggy with almost sleep. The number on the screen made his heart stop. Sloan. He hadn't seen that number in 10 years, hadn't heard her voice in a decade, but he'd never deleted her contact information, never quite been able to erase that last connection to the woman who'd walked away and taken his heart with her. Sloan? His voice came out rough, uncertain, hopeful in a way he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hello? The voice on the other end wasn't Sloan. It was young, female, and absolutely terrified. Is this the emergency number? Griffin sat up immediately, all traces of sleepiness vanishing. Who is this? What's wrong? My mommy collapsed. The words tumbled out in a rush. She won't wake up, and we don't know what to do, and we're scared, and your number was in her phone under emergency and we didn't know who else to call. Mommy. Sloan had a child. The knowledge hit Griffin like a physical blow, but he pushed the emotion aside to focus on what mattered. Okay, sweetheart. I need you to stay calm for me. Can you do that? What's your name? H. Hazel. There was a trembling breath. My sister Iris is here too. Twins. Sloan had twins. Griffin was already out of bed, grabbing clothes from his closet with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. Hazel, that's a beautiful name. You're being very brave right now. Did you call 911? We called you first because your number said emergency. Should we call 911? Yes, absolutely. But I'm going to stay on the phone with you, okay? I'm not going anywhere. In the background, Griffin heard another voice. I'm calling 911. They're sending an ambulance. Good job, Iris, Griffin said, pulling on jeans and a shirt with practiced efficiency. Hazel, can you tell me what happened to your mom? She was working on her blueprints. Hazel's voice wavered but held steady. She does that a lot at night after we go to bed. We heard a noise, like something falling, and we came to check and she was just lying on the floor. We tried to wake her up but she won't answer. Griffin grabbed his car keys, his wallet, his phone charger. Is she breathing? Yes. Iris checked. Her chest is moving. That's good. That's really good. The ambulance is coming, and I'm coming too. What's your address? Hazel recited an address in Fremont, a neighborhood about 15 minutes from Griffin's downtown penthouse. He was already heading for his private elevator, his mind racing with questions he couldn't ask. Not now. Not when two terrified children needed him to be calm and capable. Can you unlock the front door for the paramedics, Hazel? Okay. There was a pause, the sound of small feet running, a deadbolt clicking. It's unlocked. Perfect. You're doing everything right. The ambulance will be there any minute. Griffin stepped into his car, connecting the phone to Bluetooth as he pulled out of the parking garage. Seattle's streets were mostly empty at this hour, the city quieter than it ever was during the day. He drove faster than he should have, but carefully, his hands steady, on the wheel even as his mind spun with impossible possibilities. Are you? Hazel's voice was smaller now, quieter. Are you our daddy? The question hit Griffin so hard he almost swerved. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his heart hammering against his ribs. What? Your number is in Mommy's phone. She doesn't have very many numbers, mostly just work people and Grandma, but yours says emergency. We thought maybe that means you're special. Maybe that means you're our daddy. Griffin's throat closed. He thought of Sloan, the last time he'd seen her, the way she'd walked out of their apartment while he was at a board meeting. The voicemail she'd left saying she was moving to Portland, that she needed a clean break, that he deserved someone who fit into his world. That had been 10 years and 3 months ago. How old are you, sweetheart? We're 8. Me and Iris. We're twins. 8 years old. The math was simple and devastating. Griffin's hands started shaking on the steering wheel. I'm a friend of your mom's, he managed, his voice rough. I'm going to make sure she's okay. Do you hear the sirens yet? Yes, they're really close. Okay, let them in. Tell them exactly what you told me. I'm about 10 minutes away. Griffin hung up and immediately broke every speed limit between downtown and Fremont. His mind couldn't stop doing the math. 8-year-old twins. Sloan had left him 10 years ago. The timeline was perfect. Horrible and perfect. Sloane had been pregnant when she left him, or had gotten pregnant right before, and she'd never told him. She'd disappeared, changed her life, and raised his children. His children. For 8 years, without ever letting him know they existed. The rage that flooded through Griffin was white-hot and devastating, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt like grief and wonder and an aching need to see these children who might be his. He pulled up to a modest 2-story house in Fremont just as the paramedics were loading a stretcher into the ambulance. Griffin abandoned his car in the middle of the street and ran toward the house, his heart pounding. 2 small figures stood in the doorway, backlit by the interior lights. Identical twins with dark hair that hung to their shoulders, wearing mismatched pajamas. As Griffin got closer, they turned to look at him, and the world stopped. They had Sloane's face, her delicate bone structure, her expressive features, her serious way of looking at the world. But they had his eyes, green like moss after rain, the exact shade he saw every morning in the mirror. The same eyes his mother had, and her mother before her. "You came," one of them breathed, wonder evident in her voice. "You really came." "Of course I came." Griffin knelt down, making himself their height. His medical training from years ago kicked in automatically. "Can you tell me what the paramedics said?" "They said Mommy's very sick," the other twin said, her eyes filling with tears. "They said they need to take her to the hospital, but we can't ride in the ambulance, and we don't know what to do." Behind them, a paramedic approached. "Are you family?" Griffin hesitated. The twins were watching him with identical expressions of desperate hope. I'm someone who cares about them. We need a guardian for the children. The mother is unconscious, and we're transporting her to Seattle General. Is there family we can call?" "Our grandma," one twin said, "but she lives in California now. She moved after she retired." Griffin made a decision. "I'll take them. I'll get them to the hospital safely. Sir, I need a family member or legal guardian." The twin who'd called him, Hazel, pulled out Sloane's phone. "We can call Grandma. She can tell you it's okay." 10 minutes later, after a bewildered grandmother on the phone had given verbal consent for Griffin Drake, a name she clearly recognized with shock, to have temporary guardianship, the twins were in Griffin's car. The ambulance had already left, sirens wailing into the night. Griffin adjusted his rearview mirror to see the twins in the back seat. They sat close together, holding hands, their faces pale in the passing streetlights. "Your mom is going to be okay," he said, hoping it was true. "The doctors at Seattle General are excellent." "How do you know our mommy?" the quieter twin asked. "Iris," Griffin remembered. We knew each other a long time ago." "Before we were born?" Hazel asked. "Yes, before you were born. Were you friends?" Griffin thought of late nights reviewing Sloane's architectural designs. Thought of walking through rain-soaked streets at dawn, talking about everything and nothing. Thought of the way she'd looked at him like he hung the moon. Thought of the diamond ring he'd bought and never had the chance to give her. "Yes," he said quietly. "We were very good friends." The hospital emergency room was chaos and fluorescent lights. Griffin held the twins' hands, one small palm in each of his, as he navigated through the automatic doors. A nurse directed them to a waiting area, while Sloane was taken back for evaluation. Seattle General's pediatric waiting room had clearly tried to be cheerful. Bright colors, scattered toys, a television playing cartoons with the sound off. But nothing could make it less terrifying for 2 8-year-old girls whose mother had just been taken away in an ambulance. Griffin sat with them on uncomfortable plastic chairs, hyper-aware of how small their hands were in his. "What's your name?" Iris asked. "Your real name, not just the one in the phone." "Griffin Drake." Both girls went very still. "Like Drake Technologies?" Hazel whispered. "Like the Griffin Drake? You know who I am?" "Mommy showed us an article once," Iris said, "about Seattle's most successful tech companies. Your picture was in it." Griffin felt something twist in his chest. Sloane had kept track of him. She'd known what he was doing, where he was, while he'd spent 10 years trying and failing to find her. "What did your mom say about me?" The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations that twins were famous for. "That you were someone who changed the world," Hazel finally said. "That you made impossible things possible." "She said you lived in a different world than us," Iris added. "That some people are meant to be in our lives for a season, not forever." Griffin closed his eyes against the pain of those words. Different worlds. That's what Sloane had said in their last fight, that they came from different worlds and she didn't belong in his. Can I ask you girls something? They nodded in unison. When's your birthday? December 14th, they answered together. We just turned 8. Griffin did the math again. December 14th. He and Sloane had broken up in March, 10 years ago, 9 months before the twins were born. There was no question now. These were his daughters. You look like you're thinking really hard, Hazel observed. Mommy makes that same face when she's solving a problem. I am thinking hard. Griffin studied their faces, seeing himself reflected in ways that went beyond eye color. The stubborn set of Hazel's jaw was his. The analytical tilt of Iris's head was how he approached the world. These children were his in ways that transcended biology. Mr. Drake? A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. You're the guardian for the Calloway children? Temporary guardian. Their grandmother gave verbal consent. I need to speak with you about Miss Calloway's condition. The nurse glanced at the twins. Perhaps privately? They should hear it, Griffin said. They're old enough, and they deserve to know what's happening with their mother. The nurse nodded and knelt down to the twins' level. Your mom is very sick. She has something called a brain aneurysm. It's like a weak spot in a blood vessel in her brain that's bleeding. The doctors need to do surgery to fix it. Surgery? Iris's voice was small. Like cutting her open? The doctors are going to do everything they can to help her. But it's a serious surgery. She's going to be in the operating room for several hours. Is she going to die? Hazel asked bluntly. The nurse hesitated. The doctors are very good at what they do. That's not an answer, Iris said, her voice shaking. Is our mommy going to die? Griffin pulled both girls close. I won't lie to you. This is serious. But your mom is strong, and she's getting the best care possible. How do you know she's strong? Hazel challenged. You said you were friends a long time ago. People change. Some things don't change. Griffin's voice was absolutely certain. Your mother has always been the strongest person I know. And now I know she raised you two, and that makes her even stronger than I thought. A doctor in scrubs approached, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. Griffin Drake? Yes. I'm Dr. Matthews. I need to speak with you about Ms. Calloway's surgery. This time, Griffin stood but kept hold of the twins' hands. Whatever you need to say, they should hear it. Dr. Matthews looked uncomfortable but nodded. The aneurysm is in a difficult location. Miss Calloway needs immediate surgical intervention. Without surgery, the outcome is not favorable. With surgery, we estimate a 70% success rate. 70%. That meant a 30% chance Sloane wouldn't survive. A 30% chance these girls would lose their mother. A 30% chance Griffin would never get answers to the 1,000 questions burning in his chest. What do you need from me? Your consent to proceed with surgery. As temporary guardian. Do it. Whatever she needs, do it. Dad? Hazel's voice was so quiet Griffin almost didn't hear it. Did you just call him Dad? Iris asked her sister. You did too, Hazel pointed out. It felt right. Griffin's heart stopped and restarted. He looked down at these two girls, his daughters, who were recognizing him on some instinctual level that transcended logic. The surgery needs to begin immediately, Dr. Matthews said. It will take approximately 6 hours. I'll update you as we progress. After the doctor left, Griffin sat back down with the twins. The waiting room had emptied out, just the three of them and the flickering television and the weight of everything unsaid. Can I ask you girls something else? Okay. Do you? Griffin hesitated, searching for the right words. Do you know anything about your father? Mommy doesn't talk about him, Iris said. We asked when we were little, but she always got really sad. So we stopped asking. She has a box, though, Hazel added, in the back of her closet. Sometimes we hear her going through it late at night when she thinks we're asleep. There's pictures in it, and letters, and something that jingles like jewelry. What do the pictures show? A man. Hazel's eyes were locked on Griffin's face. A man with green eyes like ours. Like yours. Griffin's breath caught. We found the box once, Iris admitted. A couple years ago, we wanted to see what our dad looked like. Mommy caught us and got really upset. Not mad, just sad. Like looking at those pictures hurt her. Did you see the man's face clearly? Yes. Hazel reached out and touched Griffin's cheek with one small finger. He looked like you. Older than you are now because the pictures were old. But his eyes, His smile, the way he stood. It was like looking at you. Why didn't your mom ever talk about me, about him? Iris shrugged. She said some people are too special to talk about, that some love is so big it doesn't fit into words. Griffin felt tears burning behind his eyes. All these years, all this time, Sloane had kept his pictures, kept his letters, kept whatever jewelry he'd given her. She'd told their daughters that their father was too special to talk about, but she'd never told him they existed. The anger came back, sharp and hot. How could she keep this from him? How could she raise his children for 8 years and never once reach out? He'd had the right to know. They'd had the right to know him. You're crying, Hazel said, reaching up to touch his face again. Why are you sad? Because I'm realizing how much time I've lost. Griffin pulled both girls into his arms. And how grateful I am that you called me tonight. They sat like that for a long moment, 3 people connected by blood, and circumstance and a phone call at 2:47 in the morning. Will you tell us about our daddy? Iris asked. About the man in the pictures? Griffin took a shaky breath. What do you want to know? Did he love our mommy? Yes, more than anything in the world. Did she love him? I think so. I think she loved him so much it scared her. Why would love be scary? Because Griffin searched for words an 8-year-old could understand. Sometimes when we love someone a lot, we're afraid of losing them. And sometimes that fear makes us do things that don't make sense, like running away before we can get hurt. Is that what happened? Hazel asked. Did Mommy run away? I think she thought she was protecting herself, and maybe protecting you too. From what? From a world she thought wouldn't accept her. From people who might make her feel like she wasn't good enough. But you said she was the strongest person you know. She is. But even strong people get scared sometimes. The hours crawled by. Griffin kept the twins talking, asking them about school, about their interests, about their lives. Hazel was an artist, carrying a small sketchbook in her backpack that she'd grabbed from the house. She showed him drawings of landscapes that weren't quite landscapes. Abstract swirls of color that she explained represented emotions. This is what happy feels like, she said, pointing to a burst of yellow and orange. And this is sad. See how the blue kind of weighs everything down? Griffin studied the paintings with genuine awe. You're incredibly talented. Mommy says I see the world different than most people. That I paint what things feel like instead of what they look like. That's a gift. Don't ever lose that. Iris, meanwhile, peppered him with questions about his work. How does artificial intelligence learn? Can computers really think like humans? What's the biggest problem you've ever solved? Her analytical mind was startling in someone so young. She understood complex concepts quickly, made connections that impressed. Him, challenged his explanations when they didn't quite make sense. You're brilliant, he told her. Both of you are absolutely brilliant. Mommy says intelligence is just paying attention to things other people ignore, Iris replied. She says the smartest people aren't the ones with the most answers. They're the ones with the best questions. Your mother is very wise. Do you miss her? Hazel asked suddenly. The woman in the pictures? Every day for 10 years. Then why didn't you find her? I tried. Griffin's voice was rough with old pain. But your mother is very good at disappearing when she wants to. Maybe she wanted you to try harder, Iris suggested. Maybe she was waiting for you to fight for her. Griffin thought of the voicemails he'd left, the private investigators he'd hired, the way he'd driven past every architectural firm in Seattle, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. He'd tried. God, he'd tried. But maybe Iris was right. Maybe he should have tried harder. Should have refused to accept her disappearance. Should have fought instead of respecting her request for space. Around 4 in the morning, both twins started nodding off. Griffin found himself with a girl leaning against each shoulder, their small warm bodies trusting him completely. Children who'd known him for less than 2 hours but had apparently decided he was safe. His daughters. The word kept echoing in his mind. He was a father, had been a father for 8 years without knowing it. These brilliant, brave, beautiful girls were his. His DNA, his eyes, his stubborn jaw, and analytical mind mixed with Sloane's creativity and strength. Mr. Drake? A nurse approached quietly. There's a family room with a couch where you could get the girls more comfortable. They're going to be here a while. Thank you. Griffin carefully lifted Hazel, who barely stirred. Another nurse helped with Iris. They were settled onto a couch in a small private room, covered with warm blankets, still asleep. Griffin sat in a chair nearby, watching them breathe. In sleep, they looked even more like Sloane. Same delicate features, same long lashes against their cheeks. His phone buzzed. His assistant, probably wondering why his location was at a hospital at 4:30 in the morning. Griffin ignored it. Nothing in his business empire mattered right now. Around 6 in the morning, Dr. Matthews appeared in the doorway. Griffin stood immediately. The surgery was successful. Dr. Matthews looked exhausted but pleased. We were able to repair the aneurysm. Miss Calloway is in recovery now. The next 24 hours are critical, but her vitals are strong. Griffin felt his knees go weak with relief. When can we see her? She's still unconscious from the anesthesia. It'll be a few hours before she wakes up. But once she's stable, yes, thank you. Thank you for saving her life. After the doctor left, Griffin sat back down and let the tears come. Sloane was alive. She was going to be okay. He would get his answers. The twins would have their mother. And then he was going to have some very pointed questions about why the hell Sloane had kept his children from him for 8 years. Dad? Griffin looked up to find both twins awake, watching him with concern. Mommy's okay, he said quickly. The surgery worked. She's going to be fine. Both girls burst into tears of relief, and Griffin found himself on the couch with them, all three of them crying and holding each other, a family of strangers who somehow felt like they'd always belonged together. Can we see her? Hazel asked. Soon. She needs to wake up first. Will you stay? Iris's eyes were wide and worried. Until we can see her. Will you stay with us? Griffin pulled them closer. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. The morning light filtered through the hospital windows. Seattle was waking up outside, oblivious to the fact that Griffin Drake's entire world had shifted overnight. He had daughters. Sloane was alive, and nothing would ever be the same. Around 10 in the morning, a nurse appeared. Miss Calloway is awake. She's asking for her daughters. Griffin stood, his heart pounding. Come on, girls. Let's go see your mom. They walked through hospital corridors that smelled like antiseptic and floor cleaner. The twins held Griffin's hands, one on each side. He could feel them trembling with anticipation and relief. The nurse paused outside a room. She's been through major surgery. She might seem confused or disoriented. Try not to upset her. Griffin nodded, but his mind was already racing. What would he say to Sloane? How did you even begin a conversation after 10 years of silence? The twins pushed through the door first, running to the bed where their mother lay connected to monitors and 4S. Mommy! Sloane's eyes, those beautiful dark eyes Griffin had dreamed about for a decade, opened slowly. Her face was pale, her hair tangled, but she was alive and awake and looking at her daughters with such profound love it made Griffin's chest ache. Hi, babies. Her voice was raspy from the breathing tube. I'm okay. You had brain surgery, Hazel informed her seriously. You almost died. Very dramatic of me. Sloane managed a weak smile. Then her eyes shifted past the twins to where Griffin stood in the doorway. Their gazes locked, and 10 years of separation collapsed into nothing. Griffin saw recognition flash across her face, followed by confusion, then dawning horror. Griffin. His name on her lips after all this time felt like coming home and being gutted simultaneously. Sloane. The girls, Hazel began, then stopped. We called your emergency contact. We didn't know what else to do. Emergency contact. Sloane's face went from pale to white. She hadn't changed that number in 10 years. Griffin was still her emergency contact. He's here, Iris said, her voice filled with wonder. He came, and he stayed, and Mommy, he's our daddy. We know he is. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. What? They figured it out, Griffin said quietly. Our daughters are very smart. Our daughters. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Griffin, Sloane tried to sit up, wincing. Don't. Griffin moved to her bedside on instinct. You just had major surgery. How? When? What are you doing here? Your daughters called me at 2:47 this morning because you collapsed and they were terrified. I came because... Griffin's voice hardened. Because apparently I'm still your emergency contact, even though you've spent 8 years keeping my children from me. Sloane flinched. Girls, can you give us a few minutes? We'll be right outside, Hazel said firmly. But we're not leaving. After the twins had gone, closing the door behind them, Griffin and Sloane stared at each other across the hospital bed. So much history, so much pain. So much love that had never quite died. Were you ever going to tell me? Griffin asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Sloane's voice broke. I don't know. You don't know. Griffin laughed bitterly. You had my children, Sloane. Our children. And you just, what? Decided I didn't deserve to know? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Enlighten me. Sloane closed her eyes. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after our divorce, after I left. I was terrified. You'd moved on with Genevieve, or I thought you had, and I couldn't face you. So you disappeared. Changed your name professionally. Hid in plain sight in Seattle for 10 years. I was protecting them. From me? Griffin's voice cracked. You thought you needed to protect our daughters, from me? From your world. From people like your mother who would make them feel like they weren't good enough. Griffin stared at her, seeing the fear and pain that had driven her decision. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. My mother died 6 years ago, he said quietly. Cancer. At the end, she told me her biggest regret was driving you away. That she'd been wrong about what I needed. Sloane's breath caught. I didn't know. How could you? You vanished. Griffin sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. I looked for you, Sloane. For years, I hired investigators. I drove past every architecture firm in the city, but you were thorough. You made sure I couldn't find you. I thought you'd try to take them from me. Sloane's tears were falling freely now. You had money and power and lawyers. I was nobody. I thought if you knew about them, you'd fight for custody, and I'd lose them. So you made sure I lost them instead? Made sure they grew up without a father? They had a good life. I gave them everything they needed. Except their father. Griffin's voice was raw. Except half their family. Except the truth. They stared at each other, a decade of hurt and anger and love tangled between them. They're extraordinary, Griffin finally said. Our daughters. They're brave and brilliant, and they saved your life by calling me. I know. Hazel's an artist. She sees emotions as colors. Iris is a logician. She understands complex systems like she was born to it. I know. Sloane's voice was barely a whisper. I've raised them. I know everything about them. And I know nothing. Griffin stood, pacing to the window. I missed their first steps. Their first words. First day of school. 8 years of memories I'll never get back. Griffin, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me those years back, Sloane. I know. The door opened, and both twins appeared despite being told to wait outside. Are you fighting or fixing things? Hazel demanded. Iris moved to stand between them. We had a family meeting in the hallway. We decided we want to keep you. Griffin turned to stare at them. Keep me. You came when we called, Hazel said simply. You stayed when Mommy was sick. You didn't run away. And you have our eyes, Iris pointed out. We match. Plus, Mommy still has your pictures, Hazel added. She kept them for 8 years. That means something. Sloane closed her eyes. You went through that box. We were 7. We wanted to know what our dad looked like. Iris was unapologetic. And now we know. He looks like us, like family. Griffin felt something in his chest crack open. These children who barely knew him were claiming him as theirs. Despite everything, despite the complicated mess of their parents' history, they wanted him. I would be honored to be kept by you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Good. Hazel climbed onto the hospital bed, careful of the 4S, and curled against her mother. Then it's settled. We're a family now. It's not that simple, sweetheart, Sloane said softly. Why not? Iris joined her sister on the bed. You love him. He loves you. He's our dad. What else matters? Out of the mouths of babes, Griffin thought. These 8-year-old girls saw the simple truth that their parents were too hurt and complicated to see. But Iris was right. What else mattered? They had all lost so much time, made so many mistakes, let pride and fear keep them apart when they should have been together. Sloane, Griffin said quietly, I don't know if we can fix what broke between us, but I want to know our daughters. I want to be their father, really be their father. Will you let me? Sloane looked at him with eyes full of tears and regret, and something that might have been hope. Yes, of course, yes. It was a beginning. Not a resolution, not forgiveness, but a beginning. And sometimes that was enough. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Griffin visited the hospital every morning and evening, bringing breakfast and dinner for himself and the twins while Sloane recovered. He learned that Hazel loved blueberry pancakes and Iris preferred scrambled eggs with cheese. He discovered that they both did homework with fierce concentration, asked a million questions about everything, and had inherited Sloane's sarcastic sense of humor. "Look at this problem," Iris would say, showing him her math worksheet. "The teacher wants us to solve it the boring way. But there's a faster method, see?" Griffin would study the problem and grin. "You're absolutely right. Show me your way. My teacher says I have to follow the steps," Iris would complain. "Your teacher is teaching you the foundation. Once you master that, you can innovate. But you have to know the rules before you can break them effectively." Meanwhile, Hazel would be sketching in her notebook, creating portraits of the nurses and doctors who passed through. She captured not just their features, but their essence, somehow conveying kindness or exhaustion or determination in a few quick lines. "That's Dr. Matthews," she'd explain, showing Griffin a sketch. "See how I made his eyes tired but happy? Because he saves lives but doesn't sleep enough. You're incredibly talented, Hazel. Have you ever thought about art school? Mommy says I should focus on regular school first, but she takes me to galleries sometimes. We look at paintings and talk about what the artist was feeling. Your mom understands the importance of nurturing gifts. She's really smart about feelings," Hazel said seriously. "Even when she's sad, she helps us with our feelings." "When is your mom sad?" "Late at night. Sometimes we hear her crying in her room. She thinks we don't know, but we do." Griffin's heart ached. "What does she cry about?" "You," Iris said, looking up from her homework. "She cries about you." Griffin looked toward Sloane's room, where she was currently sleeping off the latest round of pain medication. 10 years, and she'd still been crying over him. 10 years, and she'd kept his voicemail. He pulled out his phone and opened the voicemail folder. The message he'd saved for a decade, the one Sloane had left the morning after she'd walked away. "Griffin, I'm sorry." Her voice, younger and thick with tears, filled his ear through the headphones. "I know I'm a coward for doing this in a message, but I can't see you again. It would hurt too much. Please don't try to find me. I've taken a job in Portland and I need a clean break to move on. What we had was beautiful, but it was never going to work long term. You deserve someone who fits into your world. Be happy. Please be happy." He'd listened to this message hundreds of times in the early days, looking for clues, for hope, for any indication that she wanted him to fight for her. Now, he heard something different. He heard someone trying to convince herself as much as him. Someone running from fear, not towards something better. "She lied about Portland," he said aloud. The twins looked at him. "What?" "Your mom said she was moving to Portland, but she stayed in Seattle. She hid here for 10 years. Why would she do that?" Hazel asked. "I think," Griffin paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think she wanted to be close enough to find me if she changed her mind, but too scared to actually do it." "That's dumb," Iris announced. "If you love someone, you should tell them. It's not always that simple. It should be." Griffin smiled. "You're right. It absolutely should be." That afternoon, Sloane was awake and alert when Griffin brought the twins back from the hospital cafeteria. They'd been coloring at a table, giving their mother time to rest. But Hazel had created a family portrait, 4 stick figures holding hands, and she was determined to show it off. "Look, Mommy, this is us. You and me and Iris and Dad." Sloane's eyes met Griffin's over Hazel's head. "Dad." The twins had fully committed to the title, using it constantly and naturally. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put it on the wall, so everyone knows we're a family?" The question was innocent, but it carried weight. Sloane was being asked to publicly acknowledge what the twins had already decided, that Griffin was part of their unit now. "Of course," Sloane said softly. "We can tape it right here where I can see it." After the twins were distracted by a therapy dog visiting the children's wing, Sloane and Griffin found themselves alone again. "They've really claimed you," Sloane said, her voice uncertain. "Is that okay? I don't know how to do this, Griffin. I don't know how to share them when I've been their whole world for 8 years. I'm not trying to take them from you. Aren't you?" Sloane's eyes were challenging. "You have money, resources, a lifestyle I can't provide. What if they want to live with you? Do you really think I'd do that to you? To them, I don't know what you'd do. I don't know you anymore." The words stung because they were true. They'd been apart as long as they'd been together, They were strangers who'd once been everything to each other. Then let's fix that, Griffin said. Let me be part of their lives, and maybe we can figure out how to be in each other's lives too. As what? CO parents who coordinate schedules? I don't know. Whatever we can be. Whatever works. Sloan studied his face. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not telling you. For keeping them from you. For being so scared I made terrible decisions. I'm sorry too. For not fighting harder for you when you left. For letting you go. For believing you when you said you were fine in Portland. We've both made mistakes. Yeah. Griffin reached out and took her hand carefully. But we have a chance to make different choices now. Sloane's fingers curled around his. What do you want, Griffin? Really? I want to know our daughters. I want to be their father in every way that matters. And I want, he hesitated. I want to see if there's anything left of what we had. If it's possible to rebuild. You broke my heart. You broke mine too. Can people come back from that? I don't know, but I'd like to try. Before Sloane could respond, the twins burst back into the room, full of excitement about the therapy dog. His name is Biscuit, Hazel announced. And he can shake hands. The handler said he's trained to comfort people who are sick or sad, Iris added. Does that mean Mommy can have a therapy dog? Sloane laughed, and the sound made Griffin's heart ache. He'd forgotten how beautiful her laugh was. I don't think our apartment allows dogs, sweetheart. Dad's house probably allows dogs, Hazel said hopefully. Dad, does your house allow dogs? Griffin glanced at Sloane. I own my building, so technically yes. See, we should get a dog and keep it at Dad's house. Sloane opened her mouth to protest, probably about the assumption that the twins would be spending time at Griffin's house. But Iris was already planning. We'd need to research breeds. Find one that's good with kids and doesn't need too much exercise since we're in the city. Maybe a rescue dog. They need homes the most. I think that's a discussion for after your mom recovers, Griffin said diplomatically. But you're not saying no? Hazel pressed. I'm saying it's something we'd all need to discuss together. As a family. The word family hung in the air. The twins beamed. Sloane looked uncertain, but didn't contradict him, and Griffin felt something that might have been hope taking root in his chest. Maybe they really could do this. Maybe broken things could be put back together if everyone was willing to try. 5 days after her surgery, Sloane was cleared to go home. The twins were ecstatic, packing up the hospital room with enthusiasm. Griffin had arranged for a car service, refusing to let Sloane take a cab or bus home. I can manage, she protested weakly. You just had brain surgery, Sloane. Let someone help you. In the car, the twins chattered non-stop about getting Mommy settled at home. They'd apparently been planning this for days, discussing in whispers what would make her most comfortable. We cleaned the whole apartment, Hazel announced proudly. Mrs. Peterson from next door helped, Iris added. She said it was important for Mommy to come home to a clean space. Griffin's throat tightened. His daughters, 8 years old, had been taking care of details while he'd focused on medical logistics. They were so capable, so mature for their age. When they arrived at the Fremont house, Griffin helped Sloane inside while the twins ran ahead. The apartment was small but warm, filled with architectural sketches on the walls and the twins' artwork covering the refrigerator. It was clearly a home built on love rather than money. The couch is made up for you, Hazel said, with your favorite blankets and pillows. And we made tea, Iris added. Mrs. Peterson showed us how. Griffin watched Sloane settle onto the couch, her daughters fussing over her with practiced care. This was their routine, their life, their world. And he was an outsider looking in. I should go, he said. Let you all get settled. Will you come back? Iris asked immediately. Of course. Tomorrow? Hazel pressed. Griffin looked at Sloane, waiting for permission. Tomorrow is fine, she said quietly. Maybe dinner? It was progress, an invitation into their space, their routine. Griffin would take it. That night, in his empty penthouse, Griffin couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the warmth of Sloane's small apartment compared to the sterile luxury of his own space. Kept seeing his daughters' faces, so open and hopeful. Around 2 a.m, his phone rang. Hazel's name appeared on the screen. His heart jumped with fear. What's wrong? Is your mom okay? Mom's fine. Hazel's voice was quiet, like she was trying not to wake anyone. I wanted to thank you. For what, sweetheart? For coming when we called. For staying. For being our dad, even though you didn't have to be. Griffin's vision blurred. I absolutely had to be. You're my daughters. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Iris says I'm being silly, that I should just let you sleep. But I wanted you to know that we're glad it was you. In Mommy's emergency contacts, we're glad we called you. I'm glad you called me too. It was the best call I've ever gotten. Even though it was scary. Especially because it was scary. Sometimes the best things come from the scariest moments. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Before Mommy wakes up and realizes I'm using her phone. Hazel? Yeah? I love you. I know I haven't said it yet, but I do. I love you and your sisters so much. There was a long pause. We love you too, Dad. Even though we just met you, it feels like we've loved you forever. After they hung up, Griffin sat in the darkness and let himself cry. For the lost years. For the miracle of these children who'd somehow always known him. For the chance to be their father. He thought about Sloane, sleeping in her small apartment with their daughters nearby. Thought about the fear that had kept her silent for 8 years. Thought about his own failure to fight hard enough to find her. They'd both made mistakes. But they'd also created something extraordinary together. 2 brilliant, loving, brave girls who saw the best in everyone and believed families could be built in a single phone call. Tomorrow, he'd have dinner with them. He'd keep showing up, keep proving himself, keep earning the title of Dad that the twins had so readily given him. And maybe, if he was very lucky, he'd find a way back to the woman who'd never really stopped being his whole heart. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, he held on to the sound of his daughter's voice saying, "We love you too, Dad," and let it fill all the empty spaces he'd been carrying for 10 years. The morning light filtered through the curtains of Sloane's small apartment, casting soft shadows across the living room where she'd been sleeping on the couch for the past week. Doctor's orders said no stairs, which meant her bedroom was off limits until she was stronger. The twins had turned her temporary living room bedroom into a recovery sanctuary, complete with drawings taped to the walls and a makeshift bedside table constructed from stacked books. Sloane woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of quiet laughter from her kitchen. For a moment, disoriented by medication and the unfamiliar morning routine, she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard his voice. "No, Iris, you have to flip it when the bubbles pop on top. See? Like this." Griffin was in her kitchen, making breakfast with her daughters. The domesticity of it made Sloane's chest ache with something she couldn't quite name. Longing, maybe, or regret for all the mornings like this they'd missed. She sat up slowly, still getting used to the headaches that came with recovery. Her fingers went automatically to the shaved patch on her head where they'd performed. The surgery, now covered by a soft knit cap the twins had picked out for her. "Mommy's awake." Hazel appeared in the doorway, spatula in hand. "Dad's teaching us to make his special pancakes. They're really good. We already tested them." "Dad." The words still felt surreal coming from her daughters' mouths. 3 weeks ago, they'd never met Griffin Drake. Now he was Dad, a fixture in their daily lives, a presence Sloane was still learning to navigate. Griffin appeared behind Hazel, looking unfairly handsome in jeans and a simple t-shirt. His usual business armor of expensive suits was nowhere in evidence. This was Griffin the father, not Griffin the billionaire CEO. Somehow that made everything more complicated. "Morning," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone performed brain surgery on me," Sloane replied, then softened. "But better. The headaches are getting less frequent." "Good. That's good." Griffin hesitated in that way he did now, uncertain of his place in her space. "I hope it's okay that I let myself in. The girls gave me the spare key last week, when Griffin had insisted on having a key in case of emergency, when Sloane had been too tired and medicated to argue. Now he was using it to make breakfast in her kitchen like he belonged there. "It's fine. The pancakes smell amazing." Hazel beamed. "We're making enough for everyone. Dad says family breakfast is important." Family. There was that word again, wielded with such casual certainty by her 8-year-old daughters. As if the 4 of them had been a family unit all along, instead of strangers held together by biology and a late-night phone call. Iris emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray with practiced care. "We made you tea, the kind you like with honey and lemon. And Dad said you should eat protein, so there's eggs too. You guys didn't have to do all this. We wanted to." Hazel sat on the edge of the couch. "You always take care of us. Now we get to take care of you." Griffin stood in the doorway, watching this exchange with an expression Sloane couldn't quite read. There was tenderness there, and something that looked like grief. She realized he was seeing all the years he'd missed. All the mornings when it had been just her and the twins, taking care of each other. Later, after breakfast had been eaten and the twins had been sent to brush their teeth and get dressed for the day, Griffin helped Sloane back to the couch. His hands were gentle, professional, keeping just enough distance to be respectful. "You don't have to keep doing this," Sloane said quietly. "Coming over every morning, making breakfast. The girls and I have managed for 8 years. I know you have." Griffin sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining that careful distance. "You've done an incredible job raising them, but you don't have to do it alone anymore." "Is that what this is? Guilt-driven overcompensation?" His jaw tightened. "Is it so hard to believe I actually want to be here?" "Yes," Sloane said honestly. 3 weeks ago, you didn't know they existed. Now you're playing house like we're a ready-made family. Forgive me for being skeptical about how long this lasts. I'm not playing anything." Griffin's voice was low and intense. "Those are my daughters in there, Sloane. My children. I missed 8 years of their lives because you never told me they existed. Don't act like I'm the one being insincere here." The words hung between them, sharp and true. Sloane looked away first. "You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this. How to share them with you when they've been mine, only mine for so long. They're not property to be shared. They're people, and they clearly have room in their hearts for both of us." From the bathroom, the sound of the twins arguing about whose turn. It was to use the good toothbrush filtered through the apartment. Normal, everyday sounds that made Griffin's expression soften. "Tell me about them," he said. "The things I don't know. Their favorite foods, their fears, the stories you tell them at bedtime. I want to know everything." Sloane studied his face, seeing genuine hunger for knowledge there. This wasn't obligation or guilt. This was a man trying to learn his children. "Hazel," she began slowly, "is terrified of thunderstorms. Not the lightning, but the thunder. She says it sounds like the sky is breaking. When she was 4, she started painting during storms to, as she put it, give the sky something beautiful to calm down about." Griffin's lips curved into a small smile. "That's very her. Iris is afraid of disappointing people. She'll work herself sick trying to be perfect at everything because she thinks that's how you earn love. I've been trying to teach her that love isn't something you have to earn, but she's stubborn. Wonder where she gets that from." Sloane ignored the gentle jab. "They both have nightmares sometimes. Hazel's are abstract, colors and sounds that frighten her. Iris dreams about logic problems she can't solve. I usually end up with both of them in my bed at least once a week." "What do you do when they have nightmares?" "For Hazel, I describe beautiful things until she calms down. Gardens and sunsets and the way light looks through water. For Iris, I give her easy problems to solve. Simple math or logic puzzles that prove her brain is working fine." "You're a good mother." The compliment, simple and sincere, made Sloane's throat tight. "I try. They deserve the best. They have the best. They have you." Before Sloane could respond, the twins emerged, dressed and ready for the day. "Can we go to the park?" Hazel asked. "Mommy's supposed to take gentle walks and the park is gentle." "I don't know if I'm up for the park yet, sweetheart. I'll take them." Griffin stood. "You should rest. We'll be back in an hour." Sloane watched her daughters automatically reach for Griffin's hands, one on each side. Watched them look up at him with complete trust and affection. 3 weeks, and they'd bonded in ways that took most parent-child relationships months or years to develop. Maybe that's what happened when you met someone you'd been listening to since before you were born. Maybe voice recognition went deeper than anyone understood. "Have fun," she managed. "Be good for your dad." After they left, the apartment felt too quiet. Sloane pulled out her laptop, intending to review the architectural plans for her latest project. But her mind kept drifting to Griffin, to the way he looked at their daughters, like they hung the moon, to the careful distance he maintained with her. She pulled up a browser and, against her better judgment, searched his name. The results were immediate and extensive. Griffin Drake, tech visionary, AI pioneer, billionaire philanthropist, articles about his company's latest innovations, photos from charity galas and business conferences, and then, buried in the older results, photos from 10 years ago. Griffin with Genevieve Ashcroft at the Drake Foundation Gala. The caption read, "Seattle's most eligible bachelor with longtime family friend Genevieve Ashcroft. Sources say an engagement announcement is imminent." The photo was dated 2 months after Sloane had left. She stared at it, at Griffin in a tuxedo with Genevieve on his arm. Genevieve looked perfect, elegant, exactly the kind of woman who belonged in Griffin's world. Sloane clicked to the next article. Griffin Drake spotted with Genevieve Ashcroft. Again, another formal event, another perfect photo. But then the articles changed. Griffin Drake seen alone at tech conference. Seattle's most eligible bachelor still single. Genevieve Ashcroft announces engagement to Harrison Pemberton. Sloane clicked through years of articles, watching Griffin's life unfold in photographs and speculation. He'd dated, apparently, though never anyone seriously. He'd built his company into an empire. He'd donated millions to charity. He'd lived a full, successful life. Without her, she was about to close the laptop when one more article caught her eye. From 6 years ago, Griffin Drake funds new architectural scholarship in honor of unnamed individual. The scholarship, awarded annually to promising architects from non-traditional backgrounds, was described by Drake as a way to honor someone who taught me that true vision has nothing to do with pedigree. Sloane's hands started shaking. The scholarship was for people like her, people who didn't come from money or connections but had talent and drive. And Griffin had created it in her honor, even though he thought she was in Portland building a life without him. She was still staring at the article when her phone rang. Her mother's number flashed on the screen. "Hi, Mom. Sloane Victoria Calloway." Her mother's voice was a mix of exasperation and concern. "Why am I hearing from Mrs. Peterson that Griffin Drake has been at your apartment every morning for 2 weeks? Because Griffin Drake has been at my apartment every morning for 2 weeks? And you didn't think to mention this to your mother?" Sloane sighed. "It's complicated, Mom. Complicated like he's the father of my granddaughters, and you never told him they existed complicated. You know about that? Hazel told me during our video call last week. Very matter-of-factly, I might add. She said, 'Grandma, we found our dad. He has green eyes like us, and he's teaching us about artificial intelligence.' That sounds like Hazel." "Sloane," her mother's voice gentled, "what are you doing?" "I don't know," Sloane admitted. "Trying to figure out how to co-parent with someone I haven't seen in 10 years. Trying to protect my daughters from getting hurt if this doesn't work out. Trying not to fall back in love with the man who broke my heart." "Did he break your heart? Or did you break your own by running away?" Sloane closed her eyes. The question was too close to truths she wasn't ready to examine. His mother made it very clear, "I wasn't good enough for him, Mom. You remember. The things she said, the way she looked at me. And Griffin chose you anyway. Until you left. He signed a contract saying he'd marry Genevieve Ashcroft. There was a merger clause and everything. Did you ever ask him about that contract? Did you give him a chance to explain?" Sloane was quiet. "Baby," her mother sighed, "you were so hurt by Catherine Drake's cruelty that you never gave Griffin a chance to prove he was different from his mother. You just assumed he'd eventually see you the way she did. Maybe I did. And now he's back in your life, being a father to his daughters, and you're terrified. Terrified he'll leave again. Terrified he won't. Terrified that I've already fallen back in love with him, and it's going to destroy me when this inevitably falls apart. Or terrified that it might actually work." Sloane heard the front door open, the sound of the twins' laughter, Griffin's deeper voice responding to something Hazel said. "I have to go, Mom." "Sloane, give him a chance. Give yourself a chance. Those girls deserve to see what real love looks like. And you and Griffin deserve a second chance at happiness." After hanging up, Sloane found the three of them in the kitchen. The twins were telling Griffin an animated story about the ducks they had seen at the park, both talking over each other in their excitement. "And then the baby duck fell in the water," Iris was saying. "But it's a duck," Hazel interrupted. "It's supposed to be in the water, but it didn't know how to swim yet," Iris protested. "All ducks know how to swim. It's instinct." "Girls," Griffin's voice carried amused authority. "One at a time. Iris, finish your story." Watching him navigate their chaos with patience and good humor, Sloane felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't obligation. Griffin Drake was all in, completely committed to being their father. The question was whether Sloane could be brave enough to let him be something to her too. The following Saturday, Griffin invited the twins to spend the day at his penthouse. It was the first time they'd be in his space, seeing how he lived. Sloane tried not to feel anxious about it. "We'll be back by 6. Griffin promised as the girls gathered their backpacks. I thought we could order pizza, maybe watch a movie. If that's okay, it's fine. Sloane forced a smile. Have fun, girls. After they left, the apartment felt cavernous in its emptiness. Sloane tried to work, tried to read, tried to do anything productive, but her mind kept imagining the twins in Griffin's luxurious penthouse, being dazzled by wealth and privilege in ways her modest architect's salary could never compete with. Around 4 in the afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text from Griffin. It was a photo of the twins standing on his balcony, Seattle spread out behind them, but their expressions weren't awed by the view. They looked unimpressed. The text below read, Hazel says your apartment has better light for painting. Iris says my furniture is uncomfortable for reading. I think they're not easily impressed by square footage. Despite herself, Sloane laughed. She texted back, told you. They're not motivated by money. His response was immediate. They're motivated by love. You raised them right. Sloane stared at those words, feeling something warm unfurl in her chest. Another text came through. Can I call you? She hesitated, then replied, Sure. Her phone rang immediately. Hi. Griffin's voice was warm. The girls are distracted by a chess game right now, so I have a few minutes. Everything okay? Everything's great. Sloane, they're incredible. Do you know Iris is playing chess at a level most adults can't reach? And Hazel has been explaining color theory to me like I'm a first-year art student. They're smart kids. They're extraordinary kids. And it's all because of you. Sloane sat on her couch, phone pressed to her ear, and let herself have this moment of connection with him. Not as CEO parents navigating logistics, but as two people who'd created something beautiful together. Griffin, I've been thinking. Yeah? About what my mom said. About how I never gave you a chance to explain about that contract with Genevieve. About how I just assumed the worst and ran. Sloane, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for keeping the twins from you, but for not trusting you enough to fight for us. Griffin was quiet for a long moment. You want to know the truth about that contract? Please. It was something our fathers drew up as a joke when I was 21. A hypothetical merger agreement that included a clause about potential marriage alliance. I signed it because I was young and didn't think it mattered. It wasn't legally binding. It was a fantasy document that our families took way too seriously. But your mother acted like it was inevitable. My mother wanted me to marry Genevieve because she came from the right family. But I didn't want Genevieve. I wanted you. Only you. Sloane closed her eyes. Then why didn't you fight harder when I left? Because you told me not to. You said you needed a clean break. You said you were moving to Portland and starting over. What was I supposed to do, stalk you? You could have tried to find me. I did try. Griffin's voice was raw now. I hired 3 different private investigators. I drove past every architecture firm in Seattle for months hoping to see you. I called your friends, your old colleagues. Everyone said you'd made it clear you didn't want to be found. I was in Seattle the whole time. I changed my professional name back to my maiden name and worked for smaller firms you wouldn't think to check. But I was here, Griffin. I was always here. Why? If you wanted a clean break, why stay in my city? Because I couldn't leave. Sloane's voice broke. Because some stupid part of me hoped you'd find me anyway. That you'd fight for me even when I said I didn't want you to. That's not fair, Sloane. I know. I know it's not fair. I'm a mess of contradictions and fear, and I pushed you away and blamed you for not chasing me, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She heard him take a shaky breath. We both made mistakes. We were young and scared, and we let other people's opinions matter more than what we felt. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed? Every day for 10 years. Sloane wiped tears from her cheeks. I found the scholarship. The one you started for architects from non-traditional backgrounds. You saw that? You did that for me. I did it because you were right. Talent and vision have nothing to do with pedigree. And I wanted to help other people like you get the chances you should have had from the start. Griffin, She didn't know how to finish that sentence. His voice softened. You don't have to say anything. I'm not telling you this to manipulate you or make you feel obligated. I just want you to know that you mattered. You've always mattered. You matter too. In the background, Sloane heard Iris calling for Griffin. I should go, he said. Chess emergency, apparently. Bring them home safe. Always. After they hung up, Sloane sat in the gathering dusk of her apartment and let herself cry. For the lost years. For the fear that had driven so many bad decisions. For the man who'd never stopped loving her, even when she disappeared from his life. That evening, when Griffin brought the twins home, they were chattering about their day but clearly ready for their own beds and familiar routines. "Thank you for today," Sloane said at the door. "Thank you for trusting me with them." Griffin hesitated. "Can we talk tomorrow? Really talk, without the kids around?" "Yes, I'd like that." After putting the twins to bed, Sloane sat alone in her kitchen with a cup of tea and pulled out the box from the back of her closet. The one Hazel and Iris had found years ago. The one that held memories of Griffin Drake and the life they'd almost had. Photographs of them together, young and in love, and certain they could conquer anything. Letters he'd written during business trips, full of inside jokes and declarations of love. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, an engagement ring he'd never had the chance to give her. She'd found it in their apartment after she'd moved out, tucked in his sock drawer with a note that said, "For when the moment is perfect." Sloane slipped the ring on her finger, just for a moment, imagining the life they might have had. Then she carefully put it back, wrapped in its tissue paper, saved for a future that might never come. The next morning, Griffin's mother, Mrs. Peterson, came over to watch the twins while Sloane and Griffin went for coffee. It felt strange and formal, like a first date, even though they'd been in each other's lives daily for weeks now. They sat in a quiet corner of a neighborhood cafe, cups of coffee cooling between them as they finally had the conversation they should have had 10 years ago. "I need you to understand why I kept them from you," Sloane began. "Not to excuse it, but to explain it. I'm listening. When I found out I was pregnant, I was 3 weeks post-divorce. I'd left you, changed my whole life, convinced myself you were better off with Genevieve. And then I saw those positive pregnancy tests and I was terrified." "Of what?" "Of you taking them from me. You had money and power and lawyers. I was nobody, working part-time while going to grad school. I thought if you knew about them, you'd fight for custody, and I'd lose. Sloane, I would never have taken them from you. I know that now. But then, right after your mother had spent months telling me I wasn't good enough for your world, I couldn't risk it. They were all I had." Griffin reached across the table and took her hand. "Tell me about when they were born." "It was December 14th, 6 weeks early. I was in the library, studying for finals, when my water broke." Sloane smiled at the memory. "I remember thinking this is terrible timing, like I could reschedule labor around my exam schedule. Very you. My mom drove up from California. She was the only one in the delivery room with me. And when they put Hazel and Iris in my arms, these tiny early babies who needed me completely, I knew I'd made the right choice. Even if it was selfish. What were they like? As babies?" Hazel cried constantly, unless she was looking at something colorful. The nurses thought something was wrong, but I realized she just needed visual stimulation. I started hanging bright pictures around her crib, and she'd quiet down immediately. And Iris? Iris was eerily calm. She'd just watch everything, taking it all in. The pediatrician said some babies are observers. Iris was analyzing her world from day one. Their first words? Hazel's was color. Iris's was why. Very on brand for both of them. Griffin laughed, but his eyes were wet. "I missed all of it." "I know. I'm sorry. Tell me more. Tell me everything." So Sloane did. She told him about the twins' first steps, taken simultaneously as they held each other's hands, about Hazel's first painting at age 3, an abstract representation of happiness that Sloane still had framed on her bedroom wall, about Iris's first logic puzzle, solved at age 4 with a focus that was almost frightening. She told him about birthdays celebrated on tight budgets but filled with love, about Christmases where her mother flew up to help, about school plays and art shows and science fairs, about the everyday moments that made up a childhood. Griffin listened to all of it, asking questions, memorizing details, trying to fill in 8 years of absence with stories. "Your turn," Sloane said finally. "Tell me about your life, the parts I missed." Griffin leaned back, considering. "I threw myself into work after you left, built Drake Technologies into what it is now, made more money than anyone could spend in a lifetime. And I was miserable. You didn't look miserable in the photos. The photos were lies. You know how this works, Sloane. You smile for the cameras, you attend the galas, you play the part. But I came home to an empty penthouse every night, and I couldn't remember why any of it mattered. What about Genevieve? The articles said you two were seen together. My mother's doing. She kept arranging coincidental meetings, making sure photographers were around. Genevieve and I went on exactly 3 dates before I told her it wasn't going to happen. She married Harrison Pemberton 2 years later, and they're very happy in New York. And you never found anyone else? I dated. Nothing serious. No one who. Griffin paused. No one who was you. Sloane felt her heart skip. Griffin, I know we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. We're different people now. But Sloane, when I look at you, I still feel everything I felt 10 years ago. And it terrifies me. Me too. They sat in silence, the weight of that admission settling between them. So what do we do? Griffin asked. About this, about us, I don't know. Take it slow. Figure out how to be co-parents first? Is that what you want? Just co-parenting? Sloane looked at this man who'd funded scholarships in her honor, who'd spent 10 years half-heartedly dating because no one measured up to a memory, who'd dropped everything to be a father to daughters he'd just discovered. And she knew the answer. No, that's not what I want. What do you want? You, us, everything we should have had 10 years ago. But Griffin, I'm scared. Of what? Of getting hurt again. Of this not working, and our daughters being caught in the middle. Of you realizing I'm still that girl who doesn't quite fit in your world. Griffin stood and moved to her side of the table, kneeling beside her chair. Sloane Calloway, you are the most accomplished architect in Seattle. You raised 2 extraordinary children alone. You built a life and a career from nothing. You don't fail to fit in my world. You transcend it. Sloane touched his face, this man she'd loved and lost and found again. We're really doing this? If you'll have me, if you'll take the risk. She leaned down and kissed him. It was soft and tentative and tasted like coffee and second chances. When they pulled apart, they were both crying. The twins are going to be insufferable about this, Sloane said. They've been scheming to get us together since you walked into that hospital waiting room. They're smart girls. They know what they want. A family. We are a family. We've always been a family. It just took us a while to find each other. Over the following weeks, Sloane and Griffin built a new relationship on the foundation of their old love. It was different this time. Slower, more careful, weighted with the knowledge of how badly they could hurt each other. They had dinner together several times a week, sometimes just the adults after. The twins were in bed, talking until late about everything and nothing. They took the twins on weekend outings, learning to navigate as a family unit. They went to Hazel's art show at school, where her emotional landscape paintings won first prize. They attended Iris's science fair, where her project on renewable energy earned her a spot in the regional competition. And slowly, carefully, they fell in love again. If you're loving this story of second chances, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who believes in the power of love to heal old wounds. And drop a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between fear and courage. Your stories inspire me to keep bringing you emotionally powerful content like this. One evening, about 2 months into their tentative relationship, Griffin arrived for dinner with a large box. "What's this?" Sloane asked, as the twins immediately began trying to peek inside. "Patience," Griffin said, laughing. "Everyone sit down first." Once they were all settled at Sloane's small kitchen table, Griffin opened the box to reveal a squirming golden retriever puppy. "You didn't," Sloane said. "We talked about it," Griffin reminded her. "The girls wanted a dog. I wanted a dog, and this little guy needed a home." Hazel and Iris were already on the floor, letting the puppy climb all over them with excited yips and tail wags. "He's a rescue," Griffin continued. 8 weeks old. The shelter said he'd be great with kids. "We can't have a dog in this apartment," Sloane protested weakly. "I know. That's why I got a house." Sloane stared at him. "You what?" Griffin pulled out his phone, showing her photos of a beautiful craftsman-style house in Fremont, just a few blocks from her current apartment. 4 bedrooms, a yard, space for a family and a dog and a life together. "Griffin Drake, what are you doing?" "Making a home. For our family. If you want it." The twins had stopped playing with the puppy and were watching this exchange with rapt attention. "This is too fast," Sloane said. "We've only been back together for 2 months. "I know, but I've also spent 10 years without you, and I don't want to waste any more time. The house is in my name, no pressure on you. but I want us all to be together. Really together. Sloane looked at her daughters, who were practically vibrating with hope. Looked at Griffin, who was offering her everything she'd been too afraid to want 10 years ago. Looked at the puppy, who had somehow become a symbol of the family they could choose to be. What should we name him? She asked. Griffin's face lit up. Yeah. We're doing this. All of it. The twins erupted in cheers. The puppy barked in excitement, and Griffin pulled Sloane into his arms, holding her like he was never letting go. They named the puppy Compass because Hazel said he'd help them all find their way home. They moved into the house in Fremont 3 weeks later, the twins, delighted by their own rooms and the yard where Compass could play. Sloane kept her apartment for a while, unwilling to completely let go of her independence. But she found herself spending fewer and fewer nights there, drawn back to the house where Griffin and the twins and the dog created a warmth her solitary apartment couldn't match. 4 months into their reunion, Griffin sat down with the twins for a serious conversation. Girls, I need to ask you something important. They looked up from their homework, identical expressions of curiosity. What do you think about me marrying your mom? Hazel dropped her pencil. Like, officially? Very officially. It's about time, Iris said matter-of-factly. You two have been making googly eyes at each other for months. Googly eyes? Griffin tried not to laugh. You know what I mean. You're in love. It's obvious. So, you'd be okay with it? If I asked your mom to marry me? Dad, Hazel said with the patience of someone explaining something very simple. We've been calling you Dad for months. We already consider this a family. Making it legal just makes sense. Very romantic, Iris added dryly. I want it to be romantic. That's why I need your help. The twins leaned in, immediately conspiring. 2 weeks later, Griffin had arranged everything. The venue was the Seattle Art Museum, rented for a private evening event. The occasion, as far as Sloane knew, was celebrating her latest architectural project, the Morrison Center, which had just won a major design award. She dressed carefully, wearing a deep blue dress the twins had helped her pick out. Griffin had been mysterious about the evening, but she trusted him. When they arrived at the museum, Sloane was surprised to see how few people were there. Just a handful of her colleagues, Griffin's closest friends, and her mother, who'd flown in from California for the occasion. Griffin, this is too much, Sloane protested. It's just a design award. It's not just anything. He took her hand. Come with me. He led her through the museum galleries to a special exhibition space. When the doors opened, Sloane gasped. The room was filled with Hazel's paintings. Every piece she'd ever created, professionally framed and displayed like the art they were. Emotional landscapes in vibrant colors, portraits that captured the soul of their subjects, abstract pieces that made you feel rather than think. Interspersed among Hazel's work were Iris's accomplishments, her science fair projects, her math competition awards, her published essay on sustainable energy. Every achievement celebrated and honored. What is this? This is your legacy, Griffin said softly. The incredible humans you created and raised. The art and brilliance and kindness you nurtured in them. Sloane turned to find the twins standing there with her mother, all three of them crying happy tears. But there's one more thing. Griffin took both her hands. Sloane Calloway, 10 years ago I was going to ask you to marry me. I had a ring and a plan and a whole speech prepared. And then you left, and I never got the chance to say the words I'd been practicing. Griffin, her voice was shaking. So I'm saying them now. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a familiar ring box. The same ring she'd found in his drawer all those years ago. You are the most brilliant, talented, brave woman I've ever known. You're the mother of my children, the architect of my heart, the only person who's ever made me feel complete. I love you. I've always loved you. Will you marry me? Sloane looked at this man kneeling before her, surrounded by evidence of the children they'd created, the life they'd built separately and could now build together. She looked at her daughters, watching with hope and certainty. She looked at her mother, nodding encouragement. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with joy. Yes, absolutely yes. Griffin slid the ring onto her finger, the same ring that had waited 10 years for this moment. Then he stood and kissed her while their daughters cheered and their friends applauded. And the museum echoed with the sound of a family finally, completely whole. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and they were home with the twins finally, in bed, Sloane and Griffin sat on the back porch watching Compass play in the moonlit yard. I can't believe you kept that ring for 10 years, Sloane said, turning her hand to watch it catch the light. I always hoped I'd get the chance to give it to you. Even when it seemed impossible, I couldn't let it go. I kept your voicemails, all of them. The twins told me. They said you played them when you were sad. They were my connection to you, my reminder that what we had was real. Griffin pulled her close. It was real. It is real. And this time, we're not letting fear or pride or anyone else's opinions get in the way. Promise? I promise. What about you? Any second thoughts about marrying me? Sloane laughed. I have about 1,000,000 thoughts, but none of them are doubts. Just excitement and joy and gratitude that we found our way back to each other. The twins found us. We were just smart enough to listen. They're pretty remarkable. They really are. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear in the Seattle sky. Inside the house, their daughters slept safely. In the yard, their dog played with endless energy. And in their hearts, a love that had survived separation and mistakes and a decade apart was finally getting its second chance. 6 months later, on a perfect June day, Sloane Calloway married Griffin Drake in a ceremony held in their backyard. The guest list was small. Sloane's mother, Griffin's reformed family members who'd learned to appreciate Sloane's worth, close friends from both their lives. And, of course, Hazel and Iris, serving as co-maids of honor in dresses they'd helped design. The ceremony was officiated by the doctor who'd performed Sloane's brain surgery, a nice bit of symmetry that made everyone cry. Because if Sloane hadn't collapsed, if the twins hadn't called Griffin's number in desperation, none of this would be happening. Do you, Griffin, take Sloane to be your wife, to love and support her dreams, to respect her independence, and to be a true partner in all aspects of your life together? I do, with all my heart, for all my life. Do you, Sloane, take Griffin to be your husband, trusting in his growth and change, believing in his commitment to you and your children, and opening your heart to love again? I do. As they kissed to seal their marriage, Hazel and Iris cheered from the front row, followed by every guest present. When they turned to face their small audience, the officiant announced with joy, I present to you the Drake family. Griffin, Sloane, Hazel, and Iris. 4 people who'd become a family through crisis and choice. 4 people who proved that love could survive anything if you were brave enough to fight for it. The reception was held in their backyard, simple and joyful. Hazel had painted a special piece for the occasion, a family portrait done in her unique style. 4 figures, easily recognizable, holding hands in a circle of light and color, warmth radiating from the center outward. This is us, she explained when presenting it during the toasts. This is what family feels like. Iris gave a toast that was logical and heartfelt in equal measure. Marriage is a contract, but the best contracts are ones where both parties benefit equally. Mom and Dad both bring value to this partnership. Mom brings creativity and strength and the ability to build beautiful things from nothing. Dad brings stability and resources and the ability to solve complex problems. Together, they're better than they are apart. That's what love should be. Addition that becomes multiplication. Every guest was in tears. Sloane's mother gave the final toast. To my daughter, who raised 2 children alone and built a career from scratch, and survived brain surgery and still had the courage to fall in love again. To Griffin, who proved that some people are worth waiting for, and to Hazel and Iris, who were wise enough to call the right number when it mattered most. May you all continue to find your way home to each other, no matter what challenges come. As the celebration continued around them, Griffin pulled Sloane onto the makeshift dance floor for their first dance as a married couple. They swayed to music that felt like it was written just for them, holding each other like they'd never let go. Any regrets? Griffin asked, his lips close to her ear. Only one. What's that? That it took us 10 years to get here. Think of all the time we wasted. Maybe we needed those 10 years. Maybe we had to become who we are now before we could make this work. When did you get so wise? Around the time 2 8-year-old girls taught me what really matters in life. Sloane looked over at their daughters who were dancing with Compass between them, the dog's tail wagging with joy. I love you, Griffin Drake. I love you too, Sloane Drake. The name still felt new and strange and perfectly right. As the evening progressed and the sun set over Seattle, the backyard, filled with the warm glow of string lights and the sound of laughter. This was family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and chosen and worth every moment it took to find. Hazel pulled out her sketchbook and began drawing the scene. The dancing couples, the playing dog, the lights reflecting in happy faces, capturing the feeling of the moment in color and line. Iris sat with Sloane's mother, asking questions about family history, collecting data on where she came from, building a narrative of her place in the world. And Griffin and Sloane danced, surrounded by the life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the twins were finally asleep, in their rooms, Griffin and Sloane sat on their porch swing, exhausted and happy. "Thank you," Sloane said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on us. For showing up that night at the hospital. For being the father our daughters needed and the partner I was too scared to believe I deserved. You deserve everything. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Sloane leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "Do you think we'll tell this story to our grandchildren someday? About how their grandmothers called their grandfather in the middle of the night and changed everything?" "Absolutely. It's a great story. Crisis, reunion, true love conquering all. Don't forget the brain surgery." "How could I forget the brain surgery? It's a crucial plot point." Sloane laughed, the sound free and joyful. "I'm happy, Griffin. For the first time in 10 years, I'm completely, genuinely happy." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence as the Seattle night wrapped around them. Inside the house, their daughters slept safely. In the yard, Compass snored in his dog bed. And on the porch, two people who'd loved and lost and found each other again held each other close. This was home, not the house or the city or the physical space. Home was the people you chose and who chose you back. Home was showing up even when it was scary. Home was trusting that love was stronger than fear. Home was a phone call at 2:47 in the morning, made by two brave little girls who recognized their father's voice before they'd ever heard him speak. Who knew, on some instinctual level deeper than logic, that the man, on the other end of the line, was supposed to be part of their story. Voice recognition, it turned out, went beyond mere sound. It was the soul recognizing its match, the heart knowing its home, the family finding its way back together through crisis and courage. And sometimes, that was enough to overcome a decade of separation. Sometimes love really did get a second chance. Sometimes broken things could be healed if everyone was brave enough to try. Griffin and Sloane had tried. Their daughters had helped them. And together, they'd built something more beautiful than what they'd lost. Not a restoration of the past, but a creation of something entirely new. A family forged in crisis, strengthened by honesty, and sustained by a love that had survived everything thrown at it. As the stars came out over Seattle, the Drake family rested in the peace of knowing they were exactly where they belonged. Together. Finally, completely, joyfully together. 1 year later, Sloane stood in her home office, reviewing plans for her latest project. Drake Technologies had commissioned her to design their new headquarters, a building that would blend cutting-edge technology with sustainable design and artistic vision. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and the fact that her husband was the one commissioning it made it even sweeter. "Mommy!" Hazel burst into the office, nearly 9 years old now and full of preteen energy. "Can Dad take us to the art supply store? I need new canvases for my next series." "What's the next series about?" "Family Voices." Hazel's eyes lit up with artistic passion. "I want to paint what different voices feel like. Yours is warm orange with threads of purple. Dad's is deep green with flashes of gold. Iris's is bright blue with silver notes." "That sounds amazing, sweetheart." "Of course you can go." Iris appeared behind her sister, holding a tablet. "I calculated the most efficient route to 3 different art supply stores based on current traffic patterns and inventory likelihood. Very thorough. Efficiency matters." Griffin appeared in the doorway, Compass at his heels. "Ready to go, girls?" "I promised we'd be back by dinner." After they left, the house quiet for a rare moment, Sloane looked around her office. Hazel's paintings covered the walls. Iris's awards and certificates filled the shelves. Photos of their blended family, growing and changing, marked the passage of time. On her desk sat a framed photo from the night she'd collapsed. Griffin had somehow obtained the hospital security footage and had a single frame printed. It showed him kneeling in the waiting room, a twin on each side, all 3 of them holding hands. The caption Hazel had written read, "The night we found each other." Sloane's phone buzzed with a text from Griffin. "The girls want to know if we can get ice cream after the art store. I'm being outvoted here. Please help." She texted back, "Ice cream sounds perfect. Get me mint chocolate chip." His response already planned on it. I know my wife. Sloane smiled, that word still giving her a thrill even after a year of marriage. Wife, partner, co-parent, lover, best friend, all the roles she and Griffin played in each other's lives, built on a foundation of hard-won trust and deeper for the struggle love. Her phone rang. Her mother's weekly call. Hi, Mom. How's my favorite architect? Busy. Happy. Designing a building that will define Seattle's skyline for the next century. No pressure. Sloane laughed. How are you? Good. Actually, I've been thinking about moving back to Seattle. I miss you and the girls. And I'm tired of California. Mom, that would be amazing. The girls would love having you closer. And I could babysit more. Give you and Griffin some actual couple time. We do okay. You do great. But everyone needs a break sometimes. Besides, I want to watch my granddaughters grow up. I missed too much when you were doing it alone. You helped more than you know. I know. But now I want to be there for the everyday moments, not just the crises. After they hung up, Sloane sat thinking about how much had changed in just over a year. How 4 people who should have been together all along had found their way to each other through crisis and courage. How love really could survive a decade of separation if it was strong enough, true enough, brave enough. The front door burst open. We're home, and we have ice cream. Sloane joined her family in the kitchen, where Griffin was distributing ice cream while the twins told competing stories about their adventure. Compass danced around their feet, hoping for dropped treats. This was it. This was everything. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and chosen, and worth every moment it took to find. That night, after the twins were in bed and the ice cream was eaten and Compass was snoring in his bed, Griffin and Sloane sat in their favorite spot on the back porch. I have news, Sloane said. Yeah? My firm was nominated for another award. The Morrison Center is getting national recognition. Sloane, that's incredible. Griffin pulled her close. I'm so proud of you. There's more. They want to feature me in architecture today. A full profile about my design philosophy and approach. You're going to be famous. I'm going to be recognized. There's a difference. Fair point. Are you going to do it? I think so. Hazel says I should share my story. That other people who don't come from traditional backgrounds should know they can succeed too. She's right. You're proof that talent and vision matter more than pedigree. Thanks to you. That scholarship you started, it's helped so many people like me. Thanks to us. We're partners now, remember? Your success is my success and vice versa. Sloane leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. Do you ever think about what our lives would be like if the twins hadn't called you that night? All the time. And I'm grateful every day that they did. Me too. Even though it was terrifying and painful and forced us to confront everything we'd been avoiding for 10 years. The best things usually are terrifying and painful. Very philosophical of you. I learned from the best. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the Seattle night sky. Inside the house, their daughters slept peacefully. In the yard, their dog dreamed of chasing squirrels. And on the porch, 2 people who'd found their way back to each other held on tight. This was the epilogue to their love story. Not an ending, but a continuation. Not a resolution of all problems, but a commitment to face them together. Not perfection, but something better. Something real and tested and strong enough to last. Voice recognition had brought them together. 2 little girls hearing a man's voice on a phone and knowing somehow that he was theirs. That he was supposed to be part of their story. But it was choice that kept them together. The daily decision to show up, to be honest, to choose love over fear. The commitment to be better partners, better parents, better versions of themselves. Griffin and Sloane had learned the hard way that love alone wasn't enough. But love plus trust, plus commitment, plus the willingness to be vulnerable even when it terrified you, that was everything. That was the foundation they'd built their second chance on. And it was strong enough to last a lifetime. As the stars came out over Seattle, the Drake family rested in peace. Together. Finally, completely, joyfully together. And that was the best ending, and the best beginning anyone could ask for. The end. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about love, redemption, and second chances. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose courage over fear, truth over pride, and love over everything else. Drop a comment and tell me, do you believe in second chances? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and risking your heart? What would you have done in Sloane's situation? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content I create. Remember, the most important emergency contact isn't in your phone. It's in your heart. It's the people you choose to call when the world falls apart. It's the voices you recognize on a soul-deep level. It's the family you build through crisis and choice, an unwavering commitment to show up for each other. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for believing in love that survives the impossible. Thank you for being part of the Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips family. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to come home to the people who've been waiting for you all along. Sometimes, all it takes is a phone call at 2:47 in the morning and the courage to answer. This is Dr. Phillips, reminding you that the best love stories are the ones we're brave enough to live. See you in the next one.